Love and peace to you. This is a verbal discourse on our Welt Ethos. My name is Peter Johansson Osisi, and I work with Arsona Ashram. And this is an introduction to teachings from Buddhism regarding the principle of Shu, the fifth principle, principle numero cinco, of our Welt Ethos. So within Buddhism, the Buddha very much teaches that the path of spiritual enlightenment and the path towards nirvana is essentially an individualistic endeavor. It's an independent, autonomous endeavor. We each have to proceed along this path ourselves, regardless of the guidance, instruction, or challenges that anybody else provides for us. And so, that being said, the Buddha also teaches that this process of spiritual enlightenment and the path towards nirvana is also social. There is engagement with others, and it involves compassion, universal compassion, tremendous compassion for others and the well-being of others and caring for the well-being of others. Indeed, the Buddha describes that this is attained through withdrawing from the world and the transgressive tendencies in household life, and causing as minimal harm as possible, and providing as much compassion as possible, depending upon the benevolence of others and the ability of others to recognize the wisdom and the righteousness of that path, just to sustain oneself, to receive material sustenance. So the path is individualistic, but it's also social as well. And so there's a passage within the Digha Nikaya that conveys actually the responsibility that those who receive wisdom and experience a revelation and an epiphany or an awakening, to share that with others, and to provide the benefit of those experiences, to help others along the path as others proceed as well. And so this is the Lohika Sutta 14 a 15, verse 14 through 15. So then, Lohika, you admit that he who should say that King Pasenadi of Kosala, being in power over Kasi and Kosala, should therefore himself enjoy all the revenue and produce thereof, bestowing nothing on anyone else, would be making danger for those living in dependence on you, or for those you and others living on dependence upon the king, and that those who thus make danger for others must be wanting in sympathy for them, and that the man wanting in sympathy has his heart set fast in enmity, and that to have one's heart set fast in enmity is unsound doctrine. Then just so, Lohika, he who should say, suppose a samana or a brahmana to have reached up to some benevolent state of mind, then should he tell no one else about it, for what can one man do for another? Just so, he who should say thus would be putting obstacles in the way of those clansmen. And that is the Lohika Sutta 14 a 15, the Lohika Sutta 14, verse 14 through 15. So, basically, to give some context, a Brahmin experiences a spiritual awakening, a certain insight, and he considers to himself just withholding it and refusing to share it with anyone else. And he thinks, what can somebody do for somebody else? And so the Buddha is told of this, and the Brahmin approaches the Buddha on some other matter, and then the Buddha asks him about this intention that he hears about, and then the Buddha says, well, doing that is like hoarding the produce that a land provides, and people who live in the community rely upon that produce. And so, if the king were to withhold that produce, would that be sound doctrine, or would that be compassion, or would that be selfishness? And so the Brahmin readily recognizes that it would be selfishness, and so the Buddha responds by saying, "Well, that's the same thing with hoarding or withholding." Withholding that spiritual awakening or that insight. There is an obligation to share it. And so the Buddha is speaking to the responsibility that we have in caring for each other, in providing compassion. there are additional teachings within Buddhism um, that speak to this experience of relationship, of mutuality and reciprocity. Shu, um, one of which is and may be considered a preliminary consideration, is simply letting go of the animosity that we have against each other, against others, and blaming others for the suffering that we experience. Recognizing how we contribute to our own circumstances, and how we can work towards transforming those circumstances. And so this is one of the basic teachings within the Dhammapada, chapter 1, 3 a 4, and it reads as thus. He was angry with me, he attacked me, he defeated me, he robbed me. Those who dwell on such thoughts will never be free from hatred. He was angry with me, he attacked me, he defeated me, he robbed me. Those who do not dwell on such thoughts will surely become free from hatred. Again, that's the Dhammapada 1, 3 a 4, chapter 1, verse 3 through 4. So again, basically, it's a matter of just as a preliminary measure, resisting the urge of blaming others and antagonizing others, of having hostility towards others, and instead, in letting go of that hostility and animosity, providing one's heart, one's mind, and one's actions for compassion for others, even those who are perceived as causing us harm. Understanding what the nature of harm and suffering is in those individuals that precipitates such transgressions, and how we contribute to those conditions, and how we can contribute towards improved conditions to alleviate that suffering. And so that is like some of the roots for Shu, for the branches and the fruits of Shu, the shoots of Shu. So again, within the Dhammapada, there is an increasingly direct articulation of Shu, of the Golden Rule. Within Dhammapada 10, 129 a 130, chapter 10, verse 129 through 130. Everyone fears punishment. Everyone fears death, just as you do. Therefore, do not kill or cause to kill. Everyone fears punishment. Everyone loves life as you do. Therefore, do not kill or cause to kill. Again, Dhammapada 10, 129 a 130, chapter 10, verse 129 through 130. So, again, it's a matter of recognizing the similarities that we have with each other, recognizing the intrinsic value that exists within each other, and responding accordingly, minimizing the harm we cause, and maximizing the compassion and the well-being that we effectuate for others throughout the universe. And so, within the Digha Nikaya of Buddhism, the Buddha also describes an experience further along the path of spiritual transcendence, where through the cultivation of samadhi, meditation, and heightened mindfulness and compassion, and concentration, an individual develops a discipline of universal compassion for all beings, and so this can be considered as essentially Shu as well, and this is from the Taviga Sutta 76, verse 76. And he lets his mind pervade 1/4 of the world with thoughts of love, and so the second, and so the third, and so the fourth. And thus the whole wide world, above, below, around, and everywhere, does he continue to pervade with heart of love, far-reaching, grown great, and beyond measure. So, whilst spiritual transcendence is essentially an individualistic endeavor, it does involve social interaction, and beyond just social interaction, it involves and requires universal compassion, genuine compassion, deep and intrinsic, pervading compassion. That is Shu. And so these are some teachings regarding Shu within Buddhism. Shu being the fifth principle, principle numero cinco, of our Welt ethos. And with that, Ananda Shanti.